Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Financial Planning Explained. I'm your host, Mike Menninger, certified financial planner and founder and owner of Menninger & Associates Financial Planning. As we do with all episodes, the intent of the program is to provide an educational experience for our viewers, and we like to talk about the various areas, the 6 different areas of financial planning. Today's episode is going to be touching upon retirement planning, and as you may recall, a few weeks ago I did a episode that talked about 401ks and retirement plans and pension plans, and talked about the defined contribution plan versus the defined benefit plan. Well, I'm pleased today to bring in an expert in that particular industry who does exactly that. And welcome, Nick Kennedy.
Mike, good to see you.
Likewise. I got Nick Kennedy here, who's the Regional Vice President of Ameritas Retirement. I've actually used Nick for a couple retirement plans that I've done for clients and businesses of our own, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity to bring Nick on board to kind of share that particular thing. So Nick, thank you. Tell me a couple minutes. Tell me what you do and tell me about your company.
Well, you alluded to it, Mike. I work with financial professionals, their business owner clients, and those employees. And basically what I try to do is look at their plans and look for areas of opportunities where we can maybe craft a plan that will lead to better retirement outcomes, and also make them aware of pitfalls and potholes that are out there, because these plans are highly regulated. There's a lot of oversight, so we want to make sure that they have all their I's dotted and their T's crossed with regards to the regulations they have to follow.
Right, and there's a lot of different things. The regulations are changing in our industry, as you know, obviously. We're living through it, becoming more regulated. But one of the things that clearly, and I think I pointed out in a prior episode, is that we've gotten away from the pension plans.
That's right.
And as 2005, and here's some statistics you may or may not know, in 2005, out of the top 100 companies in the U.S., 87 of them had pension plans.
Right.
In 2010,
defined benefit, like traditional defined benefit plan.
Correct. And in 2000 was 50, and in 2005 there was only 17. So you're obviously seeing that change. And what have you also observed? How long have you been in the business?
Well, about 25 years, actually.
Okay.
So I've been mostly doing, I've worked with defined benefit plans, but mostly it's been on the defined contribution side. And it's very interesting, Mike, if you go back into history, the whole defined benefit plan came out of the Industrial Revolution. If you worked for a factory in a village for 30 years, and you were no longer able to work, you retired, and you didn't have any money to live on. So it was really a paternalistic approach that these business owners decided to take. Let's give some people some money so they don't live in poverty in their later days, right? Fast forward, and these plans become very, very expensive because people are living longer.
Right, exactly.
So the shift that you talked about really is an economic one for the business owners. Like, hey, we can no longer afford to fund these defined benefit plans, so we're going to shift the burden to the plan participants.
Right.
So plan participants really have to decide things like how much do they want to contribute, where to invest their own money, and then how to take the money out in retirement. That's something that you didn't have to worry about with the defined benefit plan.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of don't underestimate, and this is what I tell clients all the time. Don't underestimate the intricacies of pulling the money out in retirement, because there's a lot of things. You don't want to take it out when the markets are down, et cetera. So what else can you tell me about the changes that you've observed? Like, are we expecting anything under the new administration?
I'll be interested to see. There's a lot of things that get floated out there all the time about state-sponsored plans, for instance. I think a few of them have dipped their toes in that water.
What do you mean by that?
State-sponsored retirement savings plans. For instance, a lot of the people that I work with, Mike, are small business owners.
Correct.
A lot of small business owners don't offer retirement plans. For whatever reason, they can't afford them and whatnot. So some governments are looking at that and saying, hey, we need to fill in the gap here and offer some kind of statewide 401k plan, so to speak.
Really?
Yeah, we'll see what that looks like. Like I said, Oregon, some other states have kind of dipped their toes in. We'll see what they look like. Ultimately, though, a lot of the changes the government's made over the years have made a lot of improvements. Let's go back to, for instance, 2006, Pension Protection Act. Previous to that rule, when people join their plan, they didn't know where to invest. The business owner might default the participants into something like a money market fund.
Right.
Okay. Money market fund is great because you don't lose any money on it, but it's not
But
so
doesn't
great.
make anything
If
either.
you're 35 years old, it's not the best place to put
Of course
retirement
not.
money. So they came out with a rule that allows people to default, allows business owners to default their participants into something like a target date fund.
Right. Can you
And,
explain a target? I know what a
yeah,
target date
that's
fund
right.
is, but for the
That's
viewer,
right.
can you explain a target date
Sure,
fund?
they're one of the most popular retirement savings vehicles now because they manage the money for you. Okay, so I'm an unsophisticated investor. I don't know where to put my money. The business owner might look at me and say, look, since you don't know where to put your money, we're going to put you in this target date fund based on your age. So if I was born in 1980, let's say, I might be going into a 2045 target retirement fund with the idea that that's my
When you
target
retire
retirement.
at age 65,
65,
right?
Yeah, so you start with a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds, and then that portfolio is on a glide path to get you gradually more conservative as you get close to
Right.
that target retirement
Well,
age.
I would imagine that also takes a lot of liability off the employer.
It does, yeah, because again, the concern before that was I don't want any of my participants to lose money because, well, they might come back and yell at me or sue me or something.
Of course.
But now the mindset is, well, I don't want my participant to not make any money in growth. I want them to be diversified, professionally managed, and so forth. So it does. It's a much better alternative. It's not ideal, though, because think about it, Mike. That 2045 target retirement fund that I talked about doesn't take into account your risk tolerance, right?
Of course
you
not.
work with people all the time. If somebody came into you and said, Mike, manage my retirement money, and the only question you asked them was, what year were you born?
Of course, I know
That might
doesn't
not be
do
the
it.
best thing. Yeah, so there's it's better than the way it was, but there's limitations to those target date funds. as
Sure. Well, most plans that you do, don't the employer have a financial advisor involved, or do you do plans directly with the employer?
Yeah, I almost always work through financial advisors, you know,
Right.
and the small business owners really need the extra help, and I'll tell you why. The law that governs most of these plans is ERISA, 1974 Employee Retirement Income Security Act. And, it's complicated. There's a lot of fiduciary liability for the business owners. But think about it. If you're a construction firm or a doctor's office or a landscaping firm, you have to follow the same rules that Apple follows, that Microsoft follows, that Disney follows. These are 401k plans with billions of dollars in them. They have HR departments. They have benefit departments and 401k people employed for them to
Right.
watch that plan. You're a business owner, you have an office manager who wears a bunch of different hats.
Of course.
So you need help from people like yourself, from financial advisors, from more engaged vendors, let's put it that way.
Well, one of the things that I found as the financial advisor on plans is the greatest value that we provide to the business owner who's either setting up a plan or moving it over is helping them identify the right type of plan to have, as well as we provide guidance to the employees because, as you indicated, maybe what I've observed is maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of the actual participants in the plan know what they're doing, and that's not
that's
a
generous.
knock on it. Well, and so we provide guidance, as
right.
you indicated. The target retirement fund is great for someone who wants to put it on autopilot, but it doesn't take account all the other factors that could come into it, such as what their risk tolerance is. Do they have other forms of income coming in? When are they actually taking it?
right.
So there's a lot of different things. So you work with the 401ks, but what about governmental you got nonprofits or 403bs, right?
By and large, yeah, 403bs are actually older than the 401k. The 401k, first one was written in 1980. Suburban Philadelphia. Ted Bannon is the father of the 401k. But 403bs precede that. And they're mostly nonprofits, public school teachers,
Right.
Things like that. So you'll see 403bs in the nonprofit world. And then governmental entities will traditionally have a 457 plan. The rules for these three different kinds of plans, 401k, 403b, 427, used to be much more different, but over the years, Congress has kind of gotten involved, and the rules are a little bit more, there's some subtle differences between all three plans, but they're more similar now than they used to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, from my perspective is, and the 401k is the 403b for all intents and purposes.
Very
One is the
similar,
profit.
yeah.
But doesn't the 457, I don't know enough about it because I don't do a tremendous amount of work with governmental clients, but can't you have a 403b and a 457?
Yeah, there's some ways, the governmental employees, that's where I got my start actually, working with the city of Philadelphia and their 457 plan. And they do have some advantages. They can double up, like you said, from 457 and 403B. Some employees can do that. They have different catch-up rules. We think of the traditional catch-up with a 401k as being able to contribute an extra $6,500 once you hit the age of 50.
Right.
The 457 actually gives people to really knock it out of the park in their last 3 years, to take real advantage of the years they undercontributed. Let's put it that way. So there's some subtle ways in which 457s don't have penalties, 10% penalties for withdrawals before 59.5, because traditionally you have firefighters, police officers who have retirement plans that allow them to retire earlier.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there was, those plans used to not be portable either. You used to have to either take the money out or leave it in there, and you didn't have a rollover provision, but they've changed that as well. So there's some nuances to working with governmental employees, nonprofits, and for-profit employees. But you mentioned something interesting, Mike, about one of the decisions you have to make is how to take that money out, right? It's something they didn't have to worry about with the defined benefit plan. You worked for a full career, and well, defined benefit means your benefit's defined. You get that check every month for the rest of your life.
That's correct.
Let's say you do a good job saving. You have $500,000 in your 401k. What does that mean? Well, you're 65 years old. How much do I take out a month, right? How do I make sure I don't outlive that money, right? That's where people really need the,
I think so too. And how do you invest it? And I know that there's a propensity for people to believe that they're jumping off the cliff the day that they're retiring. 65 is a date that's historically used. People think 67 because that's full retirement age of Social Security or whatever it might be. That's not relevant. But people think that they're jumping off the cliff if they're retiring at age 65 and that their money should be safe.
Right.
Well, one of the things that I try to explain to people is that you're not taking all of your money out at age 65. You need that money to last. I mean, you're going to live for another 20 to 25 years. You need that money to last, and therefore it really ought to be invested. And so a lot of people are afraid of that and just need to be educated.
Yeah, that growth in retirement. Even some younger people just starting out, you'll hear this, and I'm sure you've heard, I'm afraid of the market, there's risk in the market, things like that. And so that education is so important of we can mitigate that risk with diversification, with some income and things like that.
It all comes down to education. It's funny you referenced the millennials or the younger folks, whatever, is the problem they have is that we've experienced 3 times in the history of the markets where the markets have dropped 50%.
Wow.
Twice have been in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So you take someone who's 30 years old, they've been alive during 2 of those drops.
Yeah.
So anyway, like to be able to pick this up in a few more moments. At this moment, we would like for our sponsors to provide a commercial break. So here's a word from our sponsors. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
This plus this equals this plus this and this. Don't drink and drive.
Listen, what will make your event simply beautiful? Is it your attire, your decorations, your entertainment? Well, join me, Alicia Simone, as I chat with some amazing vendors and clientele who will share their stories and images and their experiences. Right here on RVN TV, Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. and Wednesday at 4 p.m. It will be simply beautiful. See you then.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human...
Welcome back to Financial Planning Explained with your host, Mike Menninger, Certified Financial Planner. And we're still here with Nick Kennedy, Regional Vice President of Ameritas Retirement. And we're talking about retirement plans, but one thing we didn't get to that I really wanted to bring up is how does an employer choose a retirement plan? And I'm going to start off that with, I work with the business owners, and you work with the advisors who work with the business owners. So what we have a propensity to do is we start off with, what is the business owner trying to accomplish? And it may sound greedy or rude or whatever the case may be, but it is what it is. Oftentimes, the employer wants to be able to choose a plan where he can maximize his contributions. There may be other times where he wants to choose a plan because it offers a fringe benefit that has become very important. I mean, I know people who say, well, I don't want to go to this particular company because they don't have a 401k. And so we hear 401k, the term, but there's simple IRAs, there's SEP IRAs, 401ks, then they have, new comparability plans. There's all kinds of different nuances that a business owner, if they ever wanted to choose a plan, which I opened up a plan for my business. About 5 years ago, I opened up a simple IRA because at the time I had 3 employees. It made sense. And about 3 years ago, I then switched and created a 401k. Well, what was the 401k? It enabled me as well as my employees to contribute more to the plan, plus with the Pension Protection Act that you were talking about that got ratified or finalized or whatever in 2016, opened the door for the Roth 401k. And with younger employees, the Roth 401k was something that they really wanted to take advantage of. And again, from being a financial planner and understanding the tax rules, putting money in after tax was a great thing, but just created more flexibility. So talk to me, I kind of laid all the groundwork, talk to me about more things beyond that when it comes to selecting a plan. Why choose Ameritas? Why not John Hancock or Mass Mutual, which I understand is getting out of the business? Help me fill me in.
Right, yeah, no, great questions, Mike. I'm glad you brought up the whole thing, what you did, which is started with a simple IRA, and then moved to the 401k, right? And that's the first conversation that needs to be had.
Actually, I had a SEP IRA before the simple. The
SEP
SEP IRA
first, right.
was when I was self-employed and didn't have employees. And then the simple, but go ahead.
Right, but that's the first conversation that, look, a business owner really should be relying on a trusted financial advisor. I mean, you can research this stuff on the internet. But,
of course.
But I can do the same thing with a severe medical condition. I might not get the best consultation, right?
That's a good analogy.
So really reach out to somebody who does this kind of work, a financial advisor who knows 401k a little bit. Because they might say, you're not ready for a 401k, you should do that simple IRA.
Right.
Simple IRAs are, they're cheaper. There's no cost to administer them, really. They're technically simpler, but they do have lower limits. They don't have a loan provision. They don't have the Roth. So there's different reasons to do different ones. I walked into a diner not long ago, and it was just an owner of a diner and his employee, and they were both contributing not even the maximum, but they were paying $300 a month for a 401k. That should have been a simple IRA.
Sure.
Okay. And then sometimes I run into business owners where the business owner's making really good money. They have the ability to contribute up to $58,000 a year in a 401k if you include their match and their profit sharing, and they're still doing a simple. Like they should be doing the 401k.
Of course.
So that's the kind of stuff really.
It's plan design.
That's right. So a simple IRA, SEP, solo 401k, group 401k. That's the first decision. And then the next decision is hopefully that financial advisor can go out and take a look at a couple of good companies. You mentioned a couple of those companies. They're all good companies. It's just a matter of the trust level that you have with the advisor, with the company that you hear from. Look at the fees. The fees are supposed to be reasonable and customary. And just be aware of your fiduciary obligations as the sponsor of the 401k,
right,
as the business
being the business owner.
That's right.
Correct.
You know a lot about that,
yeah.
about fiduciary.
So one of the things that, for anybody who's a business owner and a small business owner, my first introduction to a retirement plan was in 2005. And this particular gentleman, comparable to you, had introduced this thing called the new comparability plan.
Yep.
I'm like, what in the world is this? Well, in this particular instance, I had 3 owners who were older, and they had 1 employee who was younger, and it enabled them to contribute based upon a formula, which I haven't figured out yet, and I love math, I haven't figured that one out yet, based upon their age and their revenues, which enabled them to contribute like 60,000, or you said 58,000, to their plan, and just contribute some also as a profit sharing, but they were able to contribute a boatload of money to their retirement, which was a great thing.
That's a great thing. Yeah, it's funny, we go back to ERISA, the law in '74. Most of what ERISA is focused on is non-discrimination. In other words,
exactly.
You're going to offer a plan. You can't say, hey, I want to give a contribution to Joe, but not to Susie. That kind of thing. If you're going to give 3%,
but I like Joe better.
That's what they're trying to prevent. Okay, so you generally have to give equal benefits to everybody who's eligible in the plan.
Right.
But that new comparability feature, it's a profit sharing feature, which lets you give more to the higher paid employees, the owners, and the older ones, because they need to replace more for retirement.
Right, that's
so it's not really unfair when you look at it from that perspective. You can do what's called a pro-rata profit sharing plan and give 5% to Joe and Susie and you, but the new comparability looks at the higher compensated employees who are getting closer to retirement, says they need to make up more retirement income.
Absolutely, and that's a fact too.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Tell me about what happens when, how do individuals go about, how do you recommend one who is a do-it-yourselfer to choose their investments, or better yet, let's go up the ladder a little bit. I'm recommending that a company, so we'll think about it from the business owner, he's going to establish a plan. What do you do to recommend to the business owner for the selection of investments within the plan? Because we kind of talked about, and I thought about it afterwards, we kind of talked about how we guide the individual. But how do you guide the business owner who's establishing the plan for choosing investments?
Yeah, that's a great question. It gets into that whole fiduciary word, because, a lot of business owners don't realize it, but once they sponsor a plan, they're what's called a fiduciary, which means they have an obligation to make decisions about that plan that are in the best interests of the plan participants. And that includes picking the investment options and making sure they're properly monitored. Mike, you know this, most business owners, even the smartest, most sophisticated ones, aren't good at this. Okay?
It's not even that they're not good at it, it's not what they do.
It's not what they do every day. Exactly.
They don't have the time for it.
So they look to us. They look to us professionals. We put together a diversified lineup. It's going to include probably those target date funds or some kind of managed account that they could default their participants into. And then just the traditional asset classes, large cap, mid cap, small cap, a little bit of international maybe, bond funds, a cash account, and things like that. But then the important thing is to make sure that's monitored going forward.
Right.
Okay. We work with services like, I'll throw out phrases like 321 fiduciary or 338 fiduciary that'll take that responsibility off the plate of the business owner.
I've seen that before, and I was going to bring that up. I'm glad you brought that up. And for a nominal fee, you have a third party doing it. That's what Mezero does, right?
It's exactly Mezero, Morningstar, companies out there that do this, and it's the industry standard now for a small business because, again, there's too much risk.
Oh, absolutely.
We've seen lawsuits in the larger plans, right? Lawsuits where plan participants have sued the company because the share class they were using was too high for the fund, or they weren't monitoring the funds and they had 1- and 2-star funds in there. So by you don't see the lawsuits too much in the smaller plans, but you will see, there's still oversight. There's still the Department of Labor who might come knocking at your door and say it's time for an audit. So you really want to use one of these expert services that will cover your bases, so to speak.
That's right. That's the word. Starts with a B. There's another word that we could all use too.
Yeah, one of us was going to use it.
One of the things that, and this is I'm finding that it's nice to have that third party because me as a financial advisor, I also don't want that liability.
No.
Okay, now that doesn't mean we don't have the ability, but it always is nice to pass off liability. And I know that the business owners prefer to not have the liability. But generally, when I've selected investments for a plan, you have to balance. Usually, I could pick from 300 investments, and I could put all 300 in there, but you're going to blind people.
That's right.
And there's going to just be too much. They're not going to know what to do. And what I've done is I've tried, for the purpose of diversification, which I'm a believer in, you diversify, is you at least pick from the different asset classes, and you give the people the ability to have other things that they may believe in. They may believe in gold, in oil, or real estate. And so I generally like to do that. Now, what about changing plans? And that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about, because how monumental of an effort is it for a business owner who either has a plan that is being charged too much internally, or whatever the reason is that they want to switch plans? First of all, under what circumstances might a business owner want to switch plans, and what does it take to do it?
Great question. Well, first of all, it's something they should consider every 3 to 5 years, and that's as per the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor says, look, go out and benchmark this plan every 3 to 5 years. I mean, just get other quotes and see if your fees are still reasonable and customary. Right. Your investments are being properly monitored. You're getting appropriate value for the certain. You're getting the services that you should be getting. So you go through this process every 3 to 5 years. By and large, people move their plans, Mike, because of service issues. People might move their plan because of expenses. The current provider isn't able to lower their expenses to an appropriate rate. Technology, there could be all kinds of reasons why somebody moves a plan. But before you get there, make sure that you're going through that process. Benchmark it, getting other quotes. Worst case scenario, you take that quote and you put it into a file so that if you do get audited, you did your job. You're being a good steward of the plan when you do that. That's what's important.
Right, and the business owner should do that periodically.
Yes.
I know I had actually done it for a client that I provided them the plan in 2005, but that plan was a startup plan. And because it was a startup plan, it had really high fees.
That's right.
And I understand that because the 401k company like yourself, the administrator, not the term right, they get paid based on the assets that are in the plan because the business owner isn't writing you a check. Well, if there's no assets in the plan, they need to build a higher percentage rate.
Sure.
Well, once the plan got to be about $1 million, that rate was too high, and that company wasn't able to negotiate it.
Yeah.
At which point, that's what I did, is I shopped the plan. Yeah. Now, what if I find too, a lot of companies will have, let's say I sold a plan to a particular company, and I leave the company. I leave my company, I disappear, I leave the business, I retire, whatever. What does a company do to bring another advisor in? Do they look for another plan? Do they seek an advisor? What do you recommend? There may be business owners watching this right now. What do you recommend?
That's right. Yeah. So yeah. I run into this quite frequently, actually. The advisor who wrote the plan has moved on. He's in the, apparel business now, or is retired. Sometimes advisors just don't do the job. Sometimes advisors aren't interested in servicing it. So yeah, I mean, and that's a fairly easy process. And again, it starts with, just like we hire everybody, Mike, it's who do you trust? Do you have a trusted advisor in your life? Talk to somebody and say, hey, can you perform this function for me?
Right.
And that's a fairly easy process. It's typically just a letter from the trustee of the plan, the business owner, typically saying, somebody, Fran or Joe or Susie is now the advisor on my plan, and they become the advisor. And then they can do the functions of what a good advisor does, which is getting other quotes, strengthening the fund lineup, making sure the services are being provided that the plan participants and the employer needs. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've noticed is the giant plans are like your Vanguards and your Fidelities. However, they usually don't have an advisor with them. So how competitive are you against those particular plans?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's different vendors for different size plans. So Fidelity, Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, you're going to see those on the jumbo plans, and you're going to see more of the insurance companies in the smaller plans, Ameritas, John Hancock, Voya, Empower, so to speak. So we're always trying to kind of find our space. We know that our bread and butter is on the smaller plans, the plans that are under $10 million. And if you think about it, 90% of the plans in the country are in that threshold. 90% of the plans that are in the country are under $10 million because there's so many small businesses.
Sure.
There's 15 trillion in assets, but most of the assets are in the larger plans because there's billions in the Microsoft. Right. So I don't think we're ever going to be in a position where we're going to go after Microsoft or Disney or Apple. But
that's not where the most of the plans are. That may be most of the money, but not most of the plans.
Yeah. And these are the people that need the help. I enjoy giving the help to the business owners, the plan participants who really need it.
Well, good. Yeah. So believe it or not, our time is up. It goes quick.
Oh, so how do you wrap up?
Yeah, well, wrap up. What I'd like you to do is take a look in the camera, and I want to just tell people who might be viewing, whether it be an HR person, a business owner, how they would proceed with potentially changing their plan, how they could get a hold of you, what the best way, take this opportunity to get the viewers to know more about you and how they can contact you.
Yeah, so I'm Nick Kennedy, again, Regional Vice President with Ameritas Retirement. I'm based just outside of Philadelphia, west of Philadelphia. My number is 610-297-2987, and it's Nicholas.Kennedy, Nicholas.Kennedy @emeritus.com. So again, I work with financial advisors, their small business owner clients, and the plan participants. If you need any help, reach out to me.
Nick, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
I appreciate
Thanks for
you
having me.
coming on the show. And thank you for joining us. 401k plans, as we indicated, as part of the retirement planning, is a very, very important component of retirement planning. And so most people these days have gotten accustomed to having a 401k plan and not really, working with advisors or not with advisors for contributing to the plan. But today is a little more focused on the business owner. What does the business owner do far as, the process of, do I create a plan for my business? What type of plan do I create for my business? And from there, what's the best way of doing it? And, so thanks to Nick, he's provided us with some ideas of the things that you need to consider as a business owner for what type of plan you should have and the things that you should consider. So I hope everybody learned something today. And if there's anything that, we can provide, please feel free to call Nick or me. And thank you. I appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you next week as we begin the first of a two-part series on Social Security, which is also another retirement planning component, but also extremely important. Have a great week, and from your host, Mike Menninger, Certified Financial Planner, thank you for joining us. Have fun.